This is the week where I'm covering the main trio of Yashahime and giving my thoughts on them, but more importantly, I'm taking a look at what you all think about them and discussing those ideas as well. Today's topic will be Towa, a character who people seem to absolutely hate and find very annoying, or someone who people tend to like. It's pretty rare for people to be super passionate about loving Towa though, from what I've seen, and while that does happen, I kinda understand why it's not a very common thing. As such, today we'll be answering the question, is Towa a bad character? If you enjoy these more loose discussions on the characters, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, because tomorrow we are covering Setsuna, and the next day we have Moroha. If you want to support the channel a bit extra, you can also check out the Patreon in the link down below, and of course the description also has links to my Twitch and Discord where you can be a bit more of an active member of the community. We are closing in on 500 people on Discord. It is hella fun over there, so I'd love to see you join us. But with that said, let's get into your thoughts on Towa. Now, if you missed it, in our episode review, I asked for your thoughts on each of the three girls. So let's see what you guys thought about Towa. Among all of the comments I received, these are the pros and cons which came up really regularly in regards to her character. For the pros, people seem to think that she is kind, caring, and genuine. They loved her parallels with Kagome, and more specifically the twist on the character trope. Where Kagome was a human going to the brutal feudal era, Towa was instead a Hanyo living in the peaceful modern era. Many people also said that they liked that she defies gender norms, and finally people seem to love her character design and think that her abilities are pretty interesting. In terms of the negatives, a lot of people seem to be annoyed by her, and that comes down to a few core factors. 1. Her hesitance to adapt to the past. 2. How cheesy or one-dimensional she is, and 3, they think that she's a Mary Sue. Something that also came up pretty common was that people felt that there was a lot of contradictions in her character, or at least in how she was initially presented as opposed to how she's acting now. Finally, they feel that she is way overpowered or undeserving of her abilities. Now, I also asked on Twitter, YouTube, and Discord some opinions on Towa and the girls. On YouTube and Twitter, I asked if people believe that she's a good character or not. Twitter, people were pretty mixed, with about 60% of people saying that she was a good character and 40% saying that she wasn't. YouTube, which got 2,700 votes by the way, you absolute mad lads, saw 70% of people saying that she was a good character and 30% saying that she wasn't. I might start utilizing the community tab a bit more, you guys seem to really like this. And a little bit different, over on Discord, I asked which of the trio were people's favorites, asking them to only vote for one. We had 68 relevant votes. Of those, only 5 went to Towa. That said, we also had 3 extra votes for Sango and 1 for Haru. We do have people who have class in this community, thank you for those. But all of this combined, I think shows you that in the community, we have a very, at best, mixed. She is by far not the most popular. She is not as popular as her sister, and easily not as popular as Moroha, and even the best case scenario saw about a third of people not liking her character. As a whole, people do tend to enjoy her, but there's definitely something that rubs people the wrong way. Also, I really enjoyed this kind of look at what you guys think and being more interactive with the content. I'm gonna test it out a bit this week, let me know what you guys think. Anyways, with all of that in mind, let's get into my own thoughts on Towa, as well as discussing your own. Right off the bat, I want to tell you guys, I like her character. She's a solid 65 out of 100 for me, which I guess lines up with the votes, but I want to discuss what I think was done well and what could have been done better. Let's start with the surface level stuff. Design. Honestly, I think Towa looks great. Her design is simple and clean, and the red accents are great. I like that she wears the boy's uniform, I like that there's nothing over the top, I like that the white color scheme reflects Sesshomaru. What I don't like very much is her human form. It just looks shaggy and strange. Like with Inuyasha and Shiori, when we saw them becoming human, there wasn't a big change in the length or the style of their hair, and as a result, they still looked like themselves. It was very solid. But with Towa, she gets this awkward mullet kind of thing, and I don't know, that just doesn't work for me. That said, looking at the preview for episode 21, it looks like they cleaned it up a little bit this time, and she looks much nicer. Finally, we have her sword, the Kikujumonji, a weapon with a ton of really cool history associated with it, and on top of that, like, come on. How cool is it that we get to see a broken sword be used as an energy blade? That is just a classic and simple way to make someone's weapon likable. In terms of appearance, overall, I really think that hers is pretty sweet. Next up, something that a lot of people brought up is the way that her character parallels Kagome's journey into the past. And yeah, I think it's very interesting to twist Kagome's story in this way. Sending a Hanyo to live in the modern era is really neat. Even in the original Inuyasha, the episodes where he would travel to the modern era were always really big standouts to me. Seeing how he would adjust, how he blended in, and all that was just really neat even on a micro scale. But that leads into the issue here. We only really get to see Towa's experience like this until like episode 3, and realistically it's just in episode 2 where we see her dealing with society, being bullied. Well, I don't know if it's still considered bullying when you beat up the guys harassing you, but you know what I mean. She doesn't fit in, and when she defends herself, it even manifests as something that affects her family. But again, once we go back to the past, that just kind of disappears. Which is a shame because that dynamic in itself is super fucking interesting to me, and I love the idea of that being explored. Yes, Towa obviously reflects Kagome, but there's a big factor in Kagome's journey that doesn't happen in Towa's, and I think that's very important. And that is that Kagome goes home. Somewhat regularly too. We see updates on how her family's doing, her friends miss her, and people are worried about her because they think she's sick. Her grandpa has to come up with these elaborate lies to cover for her absence, and it's really fun. There is weight. Her presence and her lack of presence are both tangible things in the original series. In contrast, Towa's only real impact from the other world comes in the form of her being a fish out of water in the past. Speaking of the difference between the modern and feudal eras, another big concern many people had was that while in the modern era, Towa was some kind of badass who would wear men's clothes and beat up the bullies. Meanwhile, in the feudal era, she is much more passive and avoids confrontations or killing demons if she can. And I think that's a bit of a bad faith argument, to be honest. It's one thing to beat up bullies or act in self-defense, but it isn't like we see Setsuna killing people in the modern age. And let's be real, that would be pretty fucked up. Whether they are Hanyo, human, or even demon, if someone was raised with modern morality, it would be strange for them to be okay with murder, which when we get into the past is something that should carry over. You can make the argument that, well, she's killing demons but not humans, so what's the problem? But even that doesn't really hold up to me. You can think of it this way. Despite being a Hanyo, she's taught that killing humans was bad and to feel empathy towards others, a very modern idea. It might only be 50%, but she still is human after all, and she should try to understand them. Sure, if they attack her, she can fight back, but it isn't like she would go all out. In contrast, those living in the feudal era are less worried about empathy and more worried about just surviving. Sure, in times and regions of peace, let's all be kind together and all that, but at the end of the day, people need to worry about thieves, bandits, and of course, demons. And here is Towa's disconnect. While she can totally defend herself against the demons, she's still in the mindset of not killing. And just like she shouldn't kill humans because she is kind of human, she also shouldn't kill demons because she is kind of a demon. Something that we saw Setsuna struggling with the reverse of in episode 20. Now, here's the part that many people, myself included, dislike. Towa continuously learns lessons only to be taught it again and again because she forgets them right away. It is okay to have a character struggle with something and require personal growth, and honestly it's probably a really good thing. But the issue comes into play when that growth is not a permanent development. One of the greatest parts of characters like Sango, Inuyasha, or even Sesshomaru is that they grow as characters, learning to love and appreciate themselves or others as the story progresses. She might still struggle with those thoughts from time to time, but the lesson has overall been learned. And as such, episodes fully devoted to relearning that lesson would feel strange. Once you know 2 + 2 is 4, having a class dedicated to that would be weird. In the same way, Towa relearning that the feudal era is one where survival relies on not hesitating and that sometimes you need to kill the demon you're fighting just feels unnatural and like a slight against her character. This inability to relearn from past mistakes makes it so that Towa feels very naive, and that's a big factor of people being annoyed by her. And in direct contrast to her inability to learn lessons, she also has an issue where people feel like she learns things too quickly on the battlefield, getting new abilities like the energy sword, Soryuha, binding demons, absorbing demon energy, and wait, that's kind of it, isn't it? Like, yeah, she has the immunity to poison thing, but Towa learning new abilities was this big thing, wasn't it? The community was outraged because it felt like every new episode she would get some new ability, but Towa learning new abilities only really happened in the early episodes. But it really did feel like she had way too many early on, right? Well, let's look at Setsuna for comparison. She has Scourge of Swallows, poison claws, cyclone, moon of the resting moth, poison immunity, a demon transformation, and her demon-slaying tools and medicine as well. She has more innate abilities, techniques, and tools at her disposal, but no one comments on that. The thing is, Setsuna has had time to develop her abilities in combat, and as such, she doesn't really need to be learning new things at this point. She knows her strengths and she knows what she can do. Towa, on the other hand, is essentially starting fresh. All that she has at the start is an ability to learn new things. And to those saying that she learned them too easily, can I just direct you to her father for a moment? Sesshomaru is the king of learning things on his first try. For example, just having the innate knowledge on how to use the Windscar when he held Tessaiga. The only thing we really ever saw him struggle with was the Meido, and let's be real, that was more tied to his emotional state more so than his power or technique, so it was kind of out of his control. Realistically, anything we saw him attempt for the first time, he succeeded in acting on. I really don't have a problem with Towa's abilities, nor how fast she learned them. Yeah, I've talked about it in the past how they could have made these scenes more impactful or made it feel like they were more earned, and that still is a complaint that I have, but at the end of the day, her ability pool is not all that crazy. But despite that, she's still often labeled as a Mary Sue, because people feel like she's just gifted so many things that make her overly powerful or untouchable. I would argue though that this more so comes from the fact that Towa is the primary protagonist of the show. Yes, the twins as a whole are the main focus and Moroha is a secondary focus, but they are still all protagonists. But in that same vein, the story still obviously focuses on Towa in a heavier light than Setsuna and of course a heavier light than Moroha. As such, she tends to be the one who lands the final blow on opponents, and it seems like she can be overpowered because of it. Now, to those of you who feel this way, let me ask you something. Were you also upset when Inuyasha was the one getting those final hits? Kagome is also a primary protagonist. Miroku and Sango are secondary, but they're still all powerful in their own right, yet 9 out of 10 times it is Inuyasha killing the enemy. It wasn't that he was what's the name for a male Mary Sue? I don't know. It wasn't that he was a Larry Sue, nailed it. It was because he was the primary protagonist. The difference in the emotions around this are more related to the pacing and writing of Yashahime, much more so than Towa as a character being overpowered. More time and struggle were put into Inuyasha's victories, and as such they tended to feel more earned than Towa's, and that's the disconnect. Something I'll be addressing in a video next week though, kind of feeds into this. There is a fundamental difference in the abilities of Inuyasha and Towa. At the start of the series, despite actually being 200 or so, Inuyasha is physically 15, which is very similar to Towa, who is 14 on a developmental level. So I don't think that it's wild to believe that they're fairly similar in terms of power. You could also say that Inuyasha has more experience, so Towa shouldn't have all these flashy abilities in comparison, but there is something that Towa has which tips the scales, and no one seems to talk about it. While Inuyasha never once used jewel shards for a power boost, Towa literally has a rainbow pearl embedded in her eye, and it's used every single fight, which, obviously is going to be a big factor. On top of that, it isn't like most of the enemies that they come in contact with have rainbow pearls, unlike the many enemies who had jewel shards in Inuyasha. So realistically, the two big issues that Towa have are that she can be naive and that she's a Mary Sue. However, in the context of the show, I think those are both fine. That said, I can totally understand why people get annoyed as hell with her, and I understand why people dislike her. However, I think that my main thoughts around Towa's character fall around the idea of my most common comment. Towa is not a perfect character or even a great character, but she is a character who had a ton of potential with a lot of really great attributes who was just let down by inadequate writing and pacing. I want to love Towa, I really do, and I like just about everything about her, but so much of the things surrounding her just fall flat in so many ways, and I still like her character a lot, but God, I wish I could like her more than I do. But these are just my thoughts on Towa's character, as well as my thoughts on your replies. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. This video was a bit of a different format, a little bit more interactive, so let me know what you think of that down below as well. As always though, a big thank you to our patrons with our Dai Yokai Aikeruchu, Jacob Wiley, and Iffy Babes, our Yokai NL Cruz, Bloodwolf Mon, Janie Heck, Joker Rose, Lucifina Akuma, and Sayo Arendelle, and our Hanyo, Anthony Hogan, Brunette Thrasher, Kasim Salim, Love the Kiwi, Michael Greco, Nega Kitty, Randy Moseyman, Samantha Olsen, Savage Camel, Simon Electric, and Kiwi Dog. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, remember to stay excellent.